Thank you for coming to Granada. Thank you for this exclusive interview to Arquitectura y Empresa. It's really a great honor to have you here in Granada.
My pleasure.
And my pleasure, me too. And you are here because you are going to do a lecture about the phenomenological zones of the book of Questions of Perception that celebrates the 30 years of its first edition. And I want to know what from the 90s to present you have developed a methodological work with the conceptual representation through watercolors that synthesize the ideas of each project. I want to know what is your methodological practice and how did you start with this system of thinking?
First, I want to say what a wonderful space that I'm in. I'm absolutely amazed about this School of Architecture because I was here in Granada 11 years ago and I never saw it because this was under construction.
Yes.
And I think the proportions, the feeling of the material, the light, it's absolutely a great School of Architecture. So I'm really excited about the fact that you have such a great school. And in fact, I've been to many architecture schools, and sometimes they're in terrible buildings in America. Really, so I think it's very important that you have good proportion, good light, good material, good space as a training ground for students. And the other thing I want to say is I brought these 12 students here because I think that Alhambra is one of the most important works of architecture and landscape and space for them to study. I used to say that my most important building was the Pantheon, but it's an object.
Yeah.
The thing of Alhambra has landscape and architecture fused. The feeling of the space, the light, the water, there's all these dimensions they can learn much more from, especially today when we think about how should we change the way we teach architecture. So I'm very happy they've been yesterday morning for several hours in Alhambra, and I'm hoping that it gets into their project that they're making for our site next to Alberto's building.
Yes.
And regarding the watercolor, for me, I believe that the real dimension of architecture is in the experience, in the perception, in the phenomena, but it can't start from that. It must be driven by an idea. And my watercolor process is trying to have an idea that drives the design. Somehow a meaning that's beyond the space, the material. And I began every project by this small sketching. Many years ago, I was making these pencil drawings that took many hours. And around 1980, I was making a competition for Les Halles in Paris. And I made this big pencil drawing. And it took me 1 week to make the drawing. And I said, enough, I have to find another way. And then I chose this 5x7 watercolor pad because they fit in my bag and on an airplane. I can open it on an airplane tray. So for many reasons, it's the way I start the day every day. And actually, this morning, I'm working on a competition in Albania. And this morning, I redesigned the whole thing on 2 sheets of 5x7 in watercolor. And I sent it to the Beijing office, and he said, got it, I like the redesign, I'm starting over. So it's a way of working,
No, this
and,
is very...
and actually, when the iPhone came out, 20 years ago or whatever,
yes, almost.
I could take the picture of the watercolor, perfect. And that became a secret weapon, because I could always work with the team in Beijing and New York, wherever, just one snap and send it to all people working on the same project. So it's a method, it's a method of working today.
Thank you so much. We are very lucky to have this school for our students, and we are very lucky to have you here with us. So you have a lot of energy in your projects. You transmit to each of them your passion for the architecture. What is your secret to maintain this passion passion and effort for each project?
Well, it's my nature. You know, when I was in high school, I had a passion for hot rod cars.
Really?
So yeah, so before I decided to give that up, I was crazy about cars. So I had a 1939 Chevrolet that I had restored completely metallic red leather, you know. Then I traded that for a 1931 Model A Ford with a 283 V8 engine. This is a very American beginning, right? In Bremerton, Washington. And then I had the fastest car in Bremerton, Washington, a 1957 Chevrolet with a 327 engine. And, you know, and I would wax it every day. It was perfect, you know, spotless. And I was reading all the magazines about hot rod car culture, car craft. But it was kind of empty, but I was passionate about it, right? Then I discovered architecture. That's what I want to do.
Oh,
and I gave up the cars.
Really?
And then I got into architecture. Wow. And, you know, I have to say, I think it's the greatest profession, the greatest art, the greatest way you could, if you can make a living doing what you love, that's the greatest thing in life. And if it's creative, then you really have something, because each thing is a creative effort.
Yeah.
And then, if you can leave something for another generation to experience it, that's really, it's rare. I don't believe every building has to be built. You know, I respect many architects who didn't build very much at all, like Lebbeus Woods or Raymond Abraham. Yeah. We just had an exhibition of Giuliano Firenzuoli's wonderful drawings. He didn't build very much in his life, but still, there's a passion for architecture. I really believe that's something important. So it's not that you have to build many buildings. That's not, the art form is something that has a spirit in it, and you can embed that in the space.
Okay, great. So your work has even more merit because you developed your work in United States, and where architectural firms tend to have more corporate image. So, but in your case, you have resisted to make an outdoor architecture and maintain a small studio to make to control the project and to research. Please tell us what has been the key to resist to the anonymous American corporate system.
I'm sorry, the key
to resist to the company's huge system of the commercialization of the architecture.
No, I remain with Dimitra, who's also a partner in the architecture studio. They're dedicated to the passion of architecture, which means we do an idea, we realize the drawings, and we work on every detail. We work out all the parts and pieces. And you can only do this if you're a small team. Yeah. As soon as you grow larger and larger, you lose control. And I had one time an office of 75 people about 15 years ago. And I said, this is too commercial, because once you have 75, you have to worry about the overhead of the monthly cost, and then you have to start taking projects you wouldn't want to do in order to pay the bills, right? And that's what happened to many architects today. They became 500 people, 300 people, whatever, and then it's a different game. It's a commercialization. Yeah. And they can't be very idealistic. Right? Yeah, they have to say, oh yeah, well, we could do that, even though they know it's not, they wouldn't believe that would be the ideal project. So we always, then after I was too large, I reduced down and I said, I only want to be maximum 33 people maximum, never going any higher than that. And we still stay below that. We're 20, 25 or something like that. Mm. That's also a focus on the quality of the work. And I'm sure that's the right decision. I think what happened, I won't name names, but some people who were my age, they became so large, they lost track of what and even dropped out. Yeah. Let the 5 partners take the corporation farther and just build things. Yeah. This is not architecture with a capital A. This is a commercial operation. Yeah. And it's happening all over now. You know,
But how do you get a balance between this architectural order with private clients and the practice of the competition? Because you do a lot of competition.
Right.
So what is
but
the balance?
we don't win them.
Yeah.
Maybe we win 1 in 10.
Yeah.
It's all right. I mean, when you do a competition, you're having a creative idea, you know. You hope to win. You're having a creative idea. You get very excited. But most of the time you don't win.
Yes.
So you must take a Don Quixote attitude, right? Yeah. You just keep going. You keep smiling, and the windmill goes around, and you do the work, and you don't win, and you have to forget it and go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so, but you make the project. You know, you make something with an idea. It's exciting to make a model of it. So I have many, many unbuilt projects that I'm very proud of, like the Berlin Gedenkbibliothek from 1989, or from 1990, the Palazzo del Cinema.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing was built in that competition.
Yeah.
Nothing. But we made a very important project for us because many people, there was a Domus, a special issue of Domus. All the competitors, Aldo Rossi, James Sterling, John Nouvel, all published very well in Domus. Yeah? And Nouvel came up to me and he said, "Steven, yours was the best." So that's like really an interesting compliment from an architect who also got too big, right? John Nouvel. But I respect his work, and that was a great compliment. And from that competition, we were given the chance to do the competition in Helsinki. And that we won, the Kiasma, and that's how I started my office. We won that in 1993. Yeah. And it opened in 1998. Yeah. So that was the beginning, really, of Steven Holl Architects, the Kiasma. And now it's in great shape in Helsinki.
Yes.
So it's a very fulfilling thing to do, competitions that you can realize with all that ideal that was in the design in the first place.
Yeah. So I think it's true that I agree.
It's how you started too. Yeah. The beautiful competition you did on the street in Granada.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
We
Thank
saw
you so much.
last night all the lights all the way down. I mean, it's a very important work. And you were only, what, 31?
31, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was 40, I think I was 42, 43, something.
Very good. So also you teach in the Columbia University, and I think it's very important for you. What is really the influence in your practical profession? What is the teaching to the student helps you to what is your
the teaching is I just convey my passion for architecture and my belief in what it can do to change people's lives. And I try to make the students have their own idea, not to follow any style, to come up with their own idea that drives their design. And to realize it in models and space and light. Think about perspective, think about the proportions and the material. And every student is different, everyone is a unique individual. Yeah. And you respect that. And I think teaching is also a way of not being weighed down by the pragmatics of a practice. Yeah. I come into the office in New York and listen to this problem and that problem and this problem and that problem. I say, bye-bye, I'm going to teach.
Very nice. So in Columbia, also in the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, Kenneth Franto was also a professor, very, very good professor. He was my supervisor of my thesis, and I know very, very, very well him. But what is your opinion about Kenneth Franto? Because I think you are a friendship.
Well, he's still, he moved to London recently. He's 94, and I just had a letter exchange with him, and he had a book signing at the Architecture Association last week.
Last week?
So, yeah.
Okay.
So he's still lecturing, and, amazing, some people, keep going, and he's a really important figure in the history, because he made this wonderful, the history of modern architecture, which tried to make a position that was of clarity and connected. Alberto Sartorius was on the cover, and I think it's in like the 20th edition or something like that. It keeps getting reprinted, and he adds more and keeps getting reprinted. So he has a very particular position, which I respect. I mean, I think one thing I say sometime that comes from Kenneth's ideas, a structure is at least 25% of the cost of making a building. It should have some role in the expression, in the idea of the building should have some relation to the structure. This is very different than some people working today, where the postmodern movement lost that connection, and also deconstructive movement lost that connection. But Kenneth, kept that simple thought, and I think our work somehow keeps that idea. Once I gave a lecture in SciArc, and I put on the screen, there was a screen as big as that wall, and I put a big image of the dormitory we did at MIT, where the structure is this kind of, every room has 9 windows. So it's like a kind of sponge, porous, but that's the structure that holds the building up,
at the same
right?
time, yes.
Holds the building up. So I'm in Los Angeles, and the auditorium is full of people. And the next day, the local news guy wrote, he's criticizing Frank Gehry. I never said a word about Frank Gehry. But somehow they said that I was, it's just the way I was working, right? Anyway, Frank Gehry just turned 95 years old like 3 days ago. Pretty interesting character. And I think it's an amazing figure in the history of architecture. But it's not exactly what I was doing. But
yes, okay. And on the other hand, I know that you have a great friendship you had with Hadid. No?
Right.
Yes. And her loss affected you a lot. I remember that the same day that she died, you published a news item recalling your friendship. You meet in the 70s, I think.
Right, we met at the AA.
How was she?
No, she was the real thing. And we met, she was a student and I was a graduate student at the Architecture Association in 1976. And she had been a student of Leon Creer's. So in this very special project that was laid out by Ilya Zengalis, it was a very important project because normally when you give a studio problem to a student, you give a program and a site, and they come up with a form. Ilya gave a form, which was an Architecton by Malevich, and the student has to come up with a program and a site. And there were like 12 students or 15 students, and I had just arrived at the AA, and Rem Koolhaas was sitting here, Peter Cook was sitting there, Ilya Zengalis was the professor, and when Zaha put her project up, we both leaned forward. It was brilliant. She made a bridge over the Thames. She took the Architecton and made a bridge. And we both said, wow, this is a brilliant work. But it had arches in it from Leon Creer's studio in pink magic marker. And we said, nah, you got to redraw this. This is a great project, but you have to redraw it. Nice. Anyway, she always denied that it was pink magic marker and arches. She always did that. Anyway, but we were together from there at the AA, and then many years later, whenever she was winning a competition, I'd send her congratulations, because we were up against each other in several competitions, and I would win, and she'd, Stevie Wonder, congratulations. She called me Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder.
But in the end, she didn't like the size of the office.
Yeah.
She said, actually, she came to our apartment 3 weeks before she died of a heart attack. She came to our apartment in New York, and she brought a little Issey Miyake dress for our daughter, Io. But she said, I just wish I could go away and have a studio with 5 people and get away from this too big office. So she didn't like it.
Yeah. No.
And now they're just doing a style, right? They're not doing what she was doing. It doesn't have the passion. It's sort of, it has the shape. It's a kind of branding operation, right? And big projects all over. And I don't know, I mean, it's the same problem of the commercialization of architecture.
Yeah. Okay. Some architects spend a period living and studying the European culture, no, of the classical tradition. No? For example, Louis Kahn, after his stay in USA academic in Rome, at the age of 50, he began to develop his best projects. So, in your case, after you studying in the United States architecture, you also spent some time in Rome.
Right. I was a student in Rome.
What do you learn there in Rome? Because you were there. What is your experience?
You know, I just made a film. I just made a small video for this exhibition that's opening in Riga, Latvia, called Rome and the Teacher, Ostra Zarina. That was my teacher in Rome. So that's a 39-minute video. When you ask me, what did I learn in Rome? Please look at that. It's 39 minutes long. Many things I learned, many things, you know. And she was a great teacher, and I never forget it. And now, when you get older and you think back of what happened, how did you get here? What, you know, really, it somehow begins there, because from Bremerton, Washington, or Seattle, it's not much. You know, you have to have some grounding, and Rome was a grounding. And then I lived in London in 1976 when I studied at the AA. So London was also another dimension that was very important in my education.
Yes, I suppose. Could tell us which of two buildings from classical period are your favorites, for example? I know the Pantheon is one of them, and other maybe, and a couple from the modernity period. What do you think? What is your better project that you
well,
like?
I've returned several times to La Tourette. I think is an amazing work of Le Corbusier in Lyon, and now I'm making a project in Alsace, which is not very far from Ronchamp. So visiting those over and over again, it's great inspired works. I say to my students, you have to visit the architecture. You have to walk through it. Really be in it until we really understand it. It's very important.
Yeah, I think so. Your manifesto through your books are already a classic for all the students. Could you synthesize the most important points of maybe these manifestos?
Maybe in the lecture today I'll cover some of those points.
Yes, this is the question.
It's very hard to make some larger thoughts in catchphrase.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
I suppose. And I know that you recently founded the Steven Holl Foundation. And please tell us the reason for its creation and what activities it carries out. What is the reason that you create this foundation, and what is the activities that you are going to do there?
We are. It's been going on for a number of years. It started as a magazine, 32 BNY, which was trying to talk about the ideas and the current ideas, but we had very difficulty distributing the magazine. So we had a not-for-profit organization, and we started the T-Space exhibition. So we're having one show of architecture, and then painting and sculpture, and always having a poet at the opening and an original piece of music. So it's the synthesis of the arts, bringing together music, architecture, sculpture, painting, poetry, and with living artists. It's a very small operation. It's only 800 square feet gallery, but it's very pleasing, and we have a whole community that comes to those exhibitions and listens to the poetry. You know, we've had some very good poets. Anne Carson spoke, Robert Kelly, and this year we have Pierre Joris. We open in June with the painter Peter Halley, and it's a way of bringing architecture, painting, sculpture, poetry in a small community gallery. And it's near my archive where I have all my models, everything. So it's also an archive building. And yeah, I think it's something very pleasing for me to do, but it's also something communicating these ideas to others.
I think it's so nice, this idea. So finally, we are at the School of Architecture in Granada. Please tell to the students a recommendation for the young architect starting his or their professional career. What did you recommend it to them? For
Well,
the students,
I would say if they could work in a studio, you know, that's dedicated to architecture, like Alberto Campo Baeza studio, or Ensemble studio in Madrid, Antonio, very good studio.
Yes, of course.
Or, I mean, there are lots of good places, and that's to me is the first thing. Once you get out of school, if you could work where they care about architecture. Because if you go to work for a corporation, you get their values, right? Yeah. In a way, if you go to work for SOM or KPF, you have the values of SOM or KPF. So either do your parents' house, start on your own, or go for a small studio that's really is doing something they care about, like your studio. If you could, you know, that would be the way to start. You know.
Yeah, this is a good recommendation. Thank you so much, Steven, for coming. Thank you so much for Arquitectura y Empresa for this interview. And I hope you will come back here for a nice lecture, a nice visit. Thank you for coming to Granada. Thank you so much.